CEOs as human rights leaders. This is an idea that has grown ever more prevalent over the last couple of years for reasons that frankly astounds me, as I consider it a historically bad take. Up there with the first Roman pointing up to the clouds of ash emitting from Mount Vesuvius and go, "Pay no mind to the smoking mountain, it does that all the time." The very idea of putting unaccountable, unelected millionaires living in houses whose sizes are measured in football fields in charge of our rights just seems like a very, very bad idea to me. Then again, to be fair, a lot of the people who are pushing for this belong to a near uniquely retarded strain of mouth-breathing, crayon-inhaling, short-sighted socialism, whom by now have a long and perfidious track record of demanding that companies and governments alike march in leather-booted lockstep to the drum of their political agenda. But, tragically, there are a lot of normal people too who seem to be falling for the siren song of moneyed monarchy. For make no mistake, that is what allowing the CEOs of companies to make policy decisions will be. Nevertheless, the idea is becoming widespread. I've seen surveys where upwards of 60 to 70% of people believe that companies have responsibilities to push social change. And hey, it's not like I'm entirely unsympathetic to the idea. A nice and gentle, caring company would no doubt be lovely, in much the same way as a nice, gentle and caring shark would be lovely. Because the problems remain much the same. A shark or a company may not be outwardly actively malevolent, but their only real responsibility and accountability is to themselves. And both have a habit of mistaking people for either swimming seals or walking wallets. And that's fine. Just like you don't swim in shark-infested waters, you don't do business with a predatory company. And this is where the tortured aquatic metaphor will have to come to an end, because unlike the shark, the company has the ability to be reined in. Refuse it business or regulate it outright, and it will fall in line in an effort to keep earning money. In an ideal world, companies would be rabid dogs, ever straining at the leash, ever trying to do one more shitty thing, whilst our job is to bap the creature on the snoot occasionally and reprimand its more egregious behaviour whilst tightening the leash whenever required. The current problem with the modern phenomenon of woke corporations is that instead of us disciplining the dog is turning to us, putting on a frock and starting to preach. It is a scenario strongly reminiscent of the days the church was selling indulgences. You must consume our products not because they're better than the competitors or even good at all, even by their own standards, but because if you don't, you'll roast for all eternity in the hellish fires of Twitter. Now, let us straight up ignore the massive and self-evident problems that empowering, again, unelected, unaccountable millionaires to dictate our morality would bring, and let me instead explain why becoming a socially conscious corporation is a terrible idea for the company itself. You know, speaky they's a languagey. And to aid me in this, we have Disney's Don't Say Gay misstep holds a key lesson. CEOs are human rights leaders now, whether they like it or not. Ah yes, Disney, the company that recently cost itself Allah only knows how many tens of millions of dollars because they tried to be human rights leaders. I can hardly think of a better example for other corporations to mimic. Hey, you know what? It's all fine for me if they try. We'd see far more of them die that way after all. Anywho, our orbitally divorced from reality author trio starts by presenting us with a false dichotomy, where Disney's only options were to proactively come out in favor of wokeist nonsense or appear reactionary by taking too long to come out in support of wokeist nonsense. It is like sitting there with your testicles trapped in the nutcracker, debating whether to slam the jaw shut all at once or do it slowly, whilst never even considering the option to simply withdraw your balls from the nutcracker. Because, of course, unlike what the bullet points here claim, corporate leaders do not have to get political. And indeed, swiftly outlined in the next two is the reason why they shouldn't. Firstly, Disney's response did not please anyone, nor could it. The only options when you as a corporation wade into the social discourse is to A, be hated by 50% of the population, or B, be hated by 100% of the population. What a marvelous win-win scenario. For me, at least. And the reason for it is, as the article accurately points out, the outrage machine never sleeps, and it cares not one iota for your reasons or your justifications. And this goes for left and right outrage as well, mind you. Anything you say can and will be interpreted in the least charitable possible light. The only winning move in such a game is quite simply not to play. Now, a company like Disney has already wandered deep into the LGBTQP blah 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 beast's den, which in turn forced Disney CEO Bob to come out against the anti-groomer bill. An unfortunate stance for a company whose employees are investigated for human trafficking and sending explicit photos to what the defendant allegedly thought was a 14-year-old girl. Of course, innocent until proven guilty, obviously, and the Disney theme park nation employs, something like 60,000 people, so there are bound to be a few bad eggs, but by Mickey Mouse's favorite molestation pants, there are an awful lot of rotten eggs, it seems, along with this particular political alignment. Yet, occasional crimes aside, Disney has tied itself hand and foot to the cause, both externally and internally. Beautifully demonstrated by one employee's declaration that they are pushing their gay agenda into everything they can, and children's shows in particular. Once again, a lot of rotten eggs in one particular area here. Hey, when you think about it, it does sound like a damn fine argument in favor of the anti-groomer bill, but details. Returning to the actual point here, in Disney's case, they selected their side when it looked popular. Pride Month is a thing now, and so companies figured it would be a great way to sell some extra merchandise. Well, I hope they sold a lot of hats, as they are going to have had to sell a lot of hats to make up for their losses of special privileges in Florida. And there is the key point for any company pondering this path. Taking a side on a current year political or social issue will probably bring short-term gains. But all such issues are temporary and ever-changing. The article repeats like 5 times that companies need to constantly have their pulse on current events, launching surveys amongst their employees, hiring consultants and expert teams to keep them appraised of the thing, whatever the thing may be at any given time. The problem is, as anyone who has been on the internet for more than 5 seconds will know, that the thing changes at the speed of jalapeno-propelled diarrhea. 48 hours ago, Ukraine was the topic. Then, in actual literal minutes, it changed to Roe v. Wade. Now, to be clear as well, Ukraine had been the thing for a couple of months now, and Roe v. Wade will probably be the thing for at least a few weeks. And this sounds like a long time in people terms, but it is less than a nanosecond in corporate terms. Imagine, if you will, the vast Byzantine complexity of a 60,000 employees miniature state. Now imagine this ungodly glacier of thousands of separate projects and organizational charts and internal review boards and yada yada blobby blobbies gazing into social media, where 10 million frenzied monkeys are busily engaged in tearing each other's heads off. Take the current thing for an example. On the one hand, you have all abortions are child murder, and on the other you have, I wonder how a Supreme Court justice would feel if their daughter got raped. Go on, company. Find me the happy middle ground here. Distill for me the virtue signal that will make both sides praise rather than crucify ya. Oh, wait. And once more, the only winning move here is not to play, because worse than making up bad tech is the fact that in the age of the internet, every awful corporate tech is immortalized forever and spread and respread like the Wu flu every single solitary shitting time you foul your drawers in public for eternity. And remember, even if you manage to nail that day's current issue, today's pro-pride parade virtue signal is tomorrow's groomer admission, and vice versa in another 10-20 odd years. But what is the alternative? Well, if shut up is too complex a stance, to be fair, it may not be the ideal one. If indeed, as the article claims, people want companies to be socially aware, stupid idea, but oh well, then perhaps the best thing to do is be actively neutral. For the article is correct when it says that if you do not make the narrative, one will be spun for you, and hell, it might be created for you whole cloth anyway. But a company that simply states, no, we're not getting involved in this. We're a company that makes films of dancing mice. We have no opinions on goddamn abortion. Would probably harvest a lot of positive attention in this day and age. But of course, making such a statement would assume that the company actually had the best interest of their shareholders in mind. Because this is another key part of all of this. A company's only real responsibility should be to their shareholders. No, a company's responsibility is not to their workers. It's not even to their customers. It is first and foremost to the people who own and run the company. Now, in a beautiful, perfect capitalist world, the one that we frankly pretty much had in the 2000s, the relationship was very simple. Company does something assholish, there is a massive consumer backlash, company gets its ass beat in public for a while, then bends its head down in shame and goes, we're sorry, we won't do that again. And they'll stop doing that thing. For a while. Don't get me wrong, this system is one of everlasting constant vigilance, because if you let a company get away with some kind of shit once, they'll always do that from that point onwards. But whilst it is far from perfect, in large parts due to there being way too many people who don't have their own best interest in mind, that's kind of the problem. A lot of the reasons why so many corporations have done so many awful things is because the consumers also seem to be on the company side rather than, their own side. Yet, nevertheless, at least in this system, there is a constant back and forth, and we are the ones admonishing the corporations, whereas now, the corporations are the ones lecturing us on morality, or at the very least trying to push their personal philosophies, or more accurately, the personal philosophies of their CEOs, onto us. And the point that I've made so many times again is that with a corporation the size, the scope, and the scale of Disney, of Google, etc., hitting them in the wallet is pointless. They are simply too large. Or, well, actually, let me retract that when it comes to Disney. Disney is in a very weak position right now, and maybe someday Google will be in an equally weak position, but trying to do some kind of consumer revolt against Google right now, it just ain't gonna happen. The Google search engine is everywhere. Their services are everywhere. Hell, the Russian government was using Gmail when Google decided to lock them out from it. Google literally has power over some governmental entities. And we have allowed them to get there, in large part again due to not having our own best interest in mind first and foremost. But we're wandering off topic again. If you are dealing with a corporation like this, however, if you begin allowing them to actually set morality to become political entities, we truly are in for cyberpunk. Another awful point made in the article that I'll refer to here is that a much better solution to the Disney problem was if Disney engaged with the state of Florida and tried to work with legislators to make the bill more palatable. No, that is not a better solution. That is the cyberpunk solution. Disney does not get to go into Florida's government and say, hey, can we not do this? Can we change this piece of legislation, please? No. Again, these are unelected, unaccountable corporate entities over which we have diddly dick all power. You can vote a politician out of office. You can re-elect a good one, and you can unelect a bad one. The CEO of Disney, however, remains on station forever until he pisses off enough of his own people. So no, CEOs are not human rights leaders. Nor should they be, and we absolutely should not allow them to become human rights leaders. Luckily, at least so far, whenever a corporation has attempted to become one, it has usually resulted in a swift and violent backlash, especially now that the Republican side of American politics has finally, at long last, gone, okay, fine. We'll play the game by your rules. It took a while, but at least we got there in the end, and I, for one, look forward to watching the fire spread. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.